Nhat, thanks for joining us on the Lead, Learn, Grow podcast. Great to have you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's get started by you telling the story about how you came to find yourself in America and the story of your family. I remember you and I met many years ago, and I remember the story, and I'd love for you to share that with our audience.
Sure. Yeah, it was April 30th, 1975, almost 50 years ago. And I remember that morning where I thought was just going on a trip, was told later it was around 5:30 in the morning. And for me, I didn't know really the significance of it other than, hey, I'm going on a trip. I get to leave the house. So my dad jumped on his little Vespa scooter.
Now,
My
hold on. Where were you at the time?
This is Saigon, Vietnam. I'm sorry, I didn't give you the place there. It was Saigon, Vietnam,
Yeah.
and this is the day that a lot of people will remember or seen on PBS specials as the big exodus from the country, right? And we set off because 2 days prior, my dad had gone to the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. He was part of the South Vietnamese army fighting alongside the Americans. And he knew from the radio and CBs and everything like that that this wasn't good. It's the Viet Cong had really advanced into South Vietnam, and that there was going to be problems. And he went to the embassy and asked one of the Marines guarding it, "Hey, what's going on?" He said, "You need to get out of Dodge. Saigon's going to fall. They're advancing fast." So that with that knowledge, armed with that knowledge, he let everybody in our close family know, and his responsibility was really to get my mom and me uh, to safety and to freedom. And he decided that we were going to flee the country. And so, again, the morning of April 30th, we set off, and I was told later he had to actually go the back ways through alleys and so forth because it was getting a little dicey in that area. And we got out to the docks, and my dad decided that, hey, we need to get this Vespa to one of the family members close by. And told my mother and I, you need to find a ship. If you don't see me and you can get on a ship, go. And so we parted ways and potentially never to see my father again. And so I still remember standing on the dock of the Mekong River, and I was holding my mom's hand and I was looking up at her, and the ship was about 10 feet away. It might as well be 50 feet away from a child's point of view, right? And looking down was probably another, 12, 15 feet. And again, it was probably a mile in my eyes, right? And so I remember looking at her, I looked at the boat, and there was this little plank, about 4 inch plank, 5 inch plank, whatever. And these little Vietnamese guys were just spurring right up at about, 30-degree slope or so. And my mom was actually pregnant with my brother at the time. She was a few months pregnant. She was showing. And I was just looking at her. It's like, I don't know. I'm going to climb this little plank here. I don't know how we're going to do this. And in her infinite wisdom, she decided we're not getting on this boat. And so she went back off. And by that time, I remember starting to see a sea of people. And somehow, some way, miraculously, we found my dad again in that sea of people. And we got on this boat that we're gonna finally get out to sea on. And once we got on board, we got to the gully of the boat and was riding down the Mekong River. And I remember there was those little, those little portholes you see on ships and on TV and so forth. And I was on a bunk bed, on the top bunk bed where you could actually see out. And as we ride along, everything seemed to be hunky dory. And all of a sudden, I remember hearing pow, 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 pow. And I grabbed my leg, and my dad took me and threw me down to the ground from the top bunk. And fortunately, it wasn't the actual bullet. It might have been a piece of shrapnel or something part of the boat. And up to that point, I thought we were just going on a fun little trip. And it wasn't until that moment I realized the severity of the situation because I could see fear in people's eyes. That's when I wasn't sure what was going on, but I knew it was troubling. And then it wasn't until years later I knew actually the story that we were fleeing the country never to come back again, right? And fortunately, we were able to get away. We got out to the Pacific, not knowing where we were heading. We were just floating out to sea, and fortunately, a naval ship got us and tugged us to the Philippines, where we wound up staying for uh, a month under military uh, tents and cots, and we're standing in line to be able to get government cheese and milk and all the provisions on a daily basis. And uh, we were sitting there hanging out, wondering where we were going to go. We had no idea where we were going to go. And months later, we wound up getting to Guam, Wake Island for a little bit, and finally, uh, a church in Richmond sponsored us over. So, we got some of those things finalized. So we knew we were going to go America, or a consortium of churches I found out was going to sponsor a whole bunch of us. And we were pulled into that batch. And we wound up going to Fort Chaffee right outside of Little Rock, Arkansas. And we stayed in another refugee camp. And then that December of 1975, we landed here in Richmond. So, you know, finally got to the land of the free, and this is how I'm sitting here before you today, because my dad's vision of freedom and a better way of life.
And you were how old?
Oh, when I got on that boat, it was 3 days before my fourth birthday.
Nat, how does that, it seems so, I mean, it's an incredible story and just, you know, a tribute to you and your family and the people around you and the people that were helping and the despair of what you were leaving. But how does that how does that experience, even just as a little kid, and of course, you know, your parents really,
Yeah.
really lived it and knew what they were living and all that. But how has that impacted you as an adult?
I don't think I was as traumatized as my parents have been, as I reflect on it. I think for me, the biggest challenge was adapting to change. I think if the thing that it instilled me was adapting to constant change. And what I mean by that was that I had to learn a new language along with my parents. I had to learn a new culture. Had to learn a new way of life, and had no friends. So that, I think, was the biggest impact of that moment. And being able to see things from different perspectives. And I talk a lot about perspective in the book, and I coach a lot of the entrepreneurs out there and executives out there on perspective, because you don't see it. I get to see two amazing things about two cultures. And I think that's the most challenging part of me, because I have to strip out the bad. Right?
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I, I take all these things that my parents, you know, instilled in me that were great, that immigrant mindset, and some of the things that are kind of closed-minded, I threw away. And then I go to the American culture. I say, oh my gosh, all these innovations and those things. But, I have to remind a lot of Americans, they have a lot of that family and culture and those type of things. But I think we've gone away from that as a society as a whole. And hey, how do you take both, right? And so I see everything through rose-colored glasses, because, you know, to the extreme, because I get to take the best of two cultures and not just one. So I
Mm,
think that was the advantage of coming to America as an immigrant.
that's good. So tell us about your book. What inspired you to write it? And then I want to spend some time digging into some of the lessons that are in it today.
Yeah, I had a lot of coaches and mentors and just colleagues who've been so successful along the way. And I'm a student of success, right? My company's called Success Works, and I was just fascinated how that happens. And so after reading all these books and gleaning a lot of information and insights from uh, coaches and clients and mentors, I wanted to give back, right? And how do I scale this message? And I wanted something that was really impactful, easily digestible, and actionable. Right? There's been amazing books out there, and this book is a culmination of all of that. And I was trying to figure out what do I love about these books and what do I think they could have done better. Right? So I try to synthesize all of that so that you could pick and choose depending on the stage in life you are at, and be able to go through the table of contents and pick that out. And I've made the table of contents a little bit like an index so that you can pull from it the pieces that you need. I'd love for you to read it cover to cover, but as you know, 95% of people never read a book cover to cover. But if you do, great. If you don't, hey, how can you use this strategically and specifically if you want? I also want it to be actionable. So I have exercises at the end of each. And I give you times for these exercises because people don't view their time as limited. So I try to get little pieces of it so that you can take action now. It's great to have all this information, right? But what are you going to do with it? How many times do you actually take something and make impact from that? So I wanted to do that. And I wanted to give you my stories, but also stories from uh, the clients and people I've seen, and as well as, people I've never met before, that's been successful. So I try to give you different, again, perspectives from all sides, some of it back by anecdote, some of it back by research and study. And so that, no matter where you are and how you digest information, I want it to be easily, again, impactful, uh, digestible uh, nuggets, and then how do you utilize it? And nothing's more than a 2-minute read. At any section you can read in 2 minutes because I know we have such short attention span. So I actually had people who read it in one day, and people are still obviously not finished yet. So that's what I wanted to do, was do something that could resonate with people from different ways of learning.
So in your book, you talk about the P.A.C. model. So tell the folks about that, how you came up with that, and why you think it's an effective framework for excellence.
Yeah, the PAC model is perspective, accelerators, and compound action. Because at the end of the day, whether it's in your sales organization, Sandler, or my business, or all the way up to Tesla, Amazon, it really is about how you frame the ideas that you're going to use, uh, accelerate what I call accelerators, right? The processes. I love frameworks and models that you're going to be able to have a more predictable way of doing things and compress time and a faster way of doing things. And then ultimately compound action, because no one does these things by themselves. So how do you duplicate yourself, or how do you get people to do things that you're not great at? And so that's how I kind of imagine it. And most people can't remember anything past 3. But perspective, how do you see things from different vantage points, right? I share with you the story of, uh, coming over from Vietnam, and I get to see some perspectives. I've had coaches where they see things from different perspectives. I share in the book, I was about to fire a very good employee because I thought she didn't know what she was doing. And my coach came along and gave us assessments, and we realized we just look at things differently. And once I discovered that, gosh, she stayed on it for another 18 months, did a bang up job, and made a huge impact on the company. And, I try to share that same vantage point change, right, from for other clients as well. So that's a piece of it. Accelerators, because you're one person. How do you do things more compressed time, do it quicker and more predictable, right? And those are great frameworks. I use frameworks like the business model, Canvas, OKRs, my own personal twist on different systems as well, right? Helping people implement different systems so that it is more predictable and consistent. And then lastly, compound action, right? I always talk about the draft horses. You know, you may have heard it before. One draft horse can pull 8,000. Two draft horses, a lot of people would logically think 16, but no, they actually pull 24,000 pounds. But here's the real magic is when you have the right guidance and the right toolage and right training together with everyone, these draft horses can pull 32,000 pounds. And that's the magic. It's how do you find people that are not only going to help you pull more weight, but max out that weight because you have the same culture, the same mindset, and the same methodologies to be able to step in stride and really elevate that and pull all that weight. And then also finding, different mentors and coaches, like I've had and, fortunately been able to help other people, And that's what I love about doing what I do because I can help people through that pack model because it's simple, right? It, it's agnostic of the, the people that you're going to have, the systems and the processes. You just know those are the three things you got to fill to be able to elevate that and really unlock that exponential potential.
Do you find that there are different stages of readiness? I know, like in your book, I think I got this right. You talk about sort of an emphasis on exponential growth versus incremental growth. Um, like, is everyone ready right now to uh, engage, or sometimes is there some work that needs to be done before, call it launching? So is there a state of readiness that people need in order to grow exponentially? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's ever ready. It's usually the state of adversity.
Okay.
Yeah, we're usually pushed to adversity before that happens. And I think sometimes we have to contrive adversity to get to that exponential, right? You see athletes do it all the time and getting angry about something, they call it bulletin board material, right? Because otherwise our minds, our bodies are conditioned for thousands of years as caveman to find status quo. It's for survival, right? It's to survive, not to thrive. And I think we got to find those state of adversities and really change the, the thinking that we have. It's the self-talk and really thinking through that you were put on this earth to do great things. You're put on this earth to not be mediocre. And if you can get past that, that's when you can get transformational change. Because if you're just going to go just a notch up, it's so easy to fall back into comfort, right? But if your vision is so big and you go high enough, even, not Zig, Augmentino says, right? Aim for the moon and you'll hit an eagle. But if you hit an eagle, you're only going to hit a rock. So if you aim really big, even if you miss, you're still going to miss really high. And I think it's because people have this mindset that they can't do big enough. They don't deserve to do big things. And that's the surroundings and maybe the self-talk they've had for those years. And it usually takes an impetus, either adversity or something rarely, I would say 20% is going to an event, right? You go to a conference and it's like, oh my gosh, they can do it. I can do it too.
Mhm.
So I would say 80-20, you need either adversity is 80% of the time or 20% of, oh, you're expanding your thinking, expanding your perspective. That's why I love that word perspective so much.
Mhm.
So that's what I would say.
How do you bring that into like daily habits? Because you, I mean, we've all gone through it where, you know, we get this grand idea and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and we get excited, and then by next Tuesday we sort of lose our spirit. Maybe the first setback derails us. how do, just in a really practical way, maybe the way um, you've kind of lived your life, how do you bring these bigger ideas, these inspirational things, shoot for the stars, and then execute them on a daily, consistent basis? Any tips or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think first of all, whatever that is, it is that you're approaching, you have to ask why. I think a lot of people do it just because everybody else is doing it.
Mhm.
They say, "Oh, I got to do this morning. Oh, he did the morning routine." But then, why are you doing this? What's the bigger picture, right? And you have to envision yourself of the feeling and the excitement of that future self. I would say that's one.
Mhm.
Two, it's just the self-talk. How do you conquer the self-talk? Oh my God, it's raining today. You have to say, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be there. I'm just going to show up, right? The self-talk to show up. There is a great instance when I was trying to help someone um, in my coaching is that I just want you to show up and every day do this, just make calls, and you're used to this on the sales side. I just want you to make 5 minutes of calls. 5 minutes, that's all I ask. Every day, 5 minutes. Can you do 5 minutes? All right. Just show up every day until it becomes habit.
Mm.
Then you can go to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Same with the gym. You know, if
Yeah.
you can make it a habit where all of a sudden that's your routine, that's your nature, that's your character, right? There's a great quote I have in the book is beware your thoughts because it comes your words. Beware your words, it becomes your actions. Beware your actions, it becomes your habits. Beware your habits because it becomes your character. Beware your character because it will seal your destiny. And so that self-talk, right, saying to the thought to the self-talk of saying, hey, I'm gonna just get up today. I'm just gonna get there. I'm gonna show up, right? And then get you to the action and you're gonna build those habits to all the way to create the destiny that you want.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And it's probably I think it's one of the most underappreciated parts of people reaching their potential. We underrate consistency. And, the story that I tell sometimes is, if I eat a chocolate pie, an entire chocolate pie for lunch,
Yeah.
you know, it's probably not going to have that big of an impact on my life if I do it one time. Maybe I'm a little sluggish, maybe I'm not hungry for dinner, whatever. But if I eat an entire chocolate pie every day for lunch with absolute certainty, I can tell you what's going to happen in 90
Yeah.
days. And so we forget the compounding little bit a lot power. And I think I like how you said that. I mean, it really is. When you have the habit, then you can build the volume. And then in some ways, goals almost become irrelevant
Yeah.
because of the person that you are. You called it character. You are the kind of person who works out every day or prospects every day or whatever. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I think one other thing to add on that is, this is why you do what you do and I do what I do is that if there's a way to have accountability, whether it's a coach or accountability partner, to do that thing every day, to show up, if you have a hard time just with the self-talk, that might be something you need to do, right? You're almost like a lot of people's sales manager, accountability partner for that duration, when they engage in you. And for me, when people work with me, if I know they have accountability issues or have a hard time showing up, somebody needs to hold their hand. I still remember knocking on buddy's door. Hey, let's go work out. Let's go work out, right? Or for my clients, I said, hey, just checking in. How was your day? And they're like, oh, it's like, get on the phone right now. Just I don't care if it's just voicemail, just give them a call, follow up next morning.
Mhm.
I might, text them and say, hey, you ready for the day? It's that reminder, that encouragement, that accountability person every single day to say, if you ever watched the show of Big Bang Theory, right? Be like that Sheldon character. Penny, Penny, it might be annoying, right? But that's, when you have somebody constantly do that, that's going to help you get to that 21, 30 days, whatever that magic number of research is.
Yeah,
I like 30 because that kind of seals the deal a little bit, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. So you had a little adversity in your life recently with your injury, and I think it was just when you were launching your book. Or,
yeah, I did it 1 week before my book launch, right?
way to go,
And
Nat! Way to go! What were you thinking? So I am curious, just as an aside, how, because I know you're a person that you've always got goals and you're always striving to something, and so I know that you were probably particularly in the arena during this time, and then you have this pretty debilitating leg injury, which allows you to, or has not allowed you to work out and do your normal kinds of things. How did you use some of what's in the book, or how are you using it to help you thrive through this adversity?
yeah, I call it the power of pain. And a lot of people avoid pain. And I think one of the things that I encourage my clients to do, and I had to drink my own champagne, if you will, in December, right, is to embrace that pain. And it's very challenging because it challenged my identity of who I am, right? My physicality is such a big part of it. But it forces you to step back and look at things different, right? Again, perspective.
Yeah.
It's one of my probably running theme of this is, hey, how do I look at it from different vantage points? And oftentimes, and you've seen it before, and people have seen you really successful now, but they didn't see the hundreds of calls and all the tough times during that first 2 years, right? Now I get to do it again and prove it to myself again. And, actually in some ways, uh, the more distance and time that goes away from the actual accident itself, I look at the blessing from it. And because now I'm like, man, you know what? I like going grocery store for the longest time. I enjoyed it. And I was like, this is so inefficient. And while people were willing to do it and they gave me meals and helped me shop and all that, I was like, hey, there's Amazon shopping and, all the different carts and things that will actually deliver to you. And I was like, am I using, so am I as being as efficient as I need to be? Right. And I'm starting to develop different systems. And because I couldn't go anywhere, I realized I couldn't even get up to do things. And now it's like, how am I using my time? And I dived into more of the accelerators. What do I need to do to accelerate some of the things I need to do? And then I actually think about the who, not the what, right? I started going, what do I got to do? I got to do this and this. And then I started thinking, oh, who can help me, right? Dan Sullivan said it great. He says, think about when you're tasked with anything particularly big, think who, not what. And then I started leaning on some different people. I started outsourcing certain things because I was, especially for the first couple of weeks, a little drugged up and, not as coherent. And now I have to actually get help from my son to the close ones to um, different colleagues. And so I had to shift perspective. And so that's been a powerful thing with adversity. And we're all going to deal with adversities, maybe some small, some big, but that's where the big transformation happens is during those adversities.
Yeah, that's good. In the book, what caught my eye, I found myself reading, you talk about the five pillars of success.
Yeah.
Um, Talk a little bit about that and maybe your experience in coaching and working with others. Do do people tend to struggle with one of these pillars more than others, or Are they evenly distributed? But do you see some things pop up more commonly in your coaching than others?
Yeah, the whole reason I came up with these 5 pillars was when I got divorced, right? My whole world was shattered. And I started thinking about what's important. What are the, you know, you probably heard the story, the big rocks, right? I call them pillars. And what I struggled the most with, and I think most people do, and let me just recap the pillars real quick: faith and spiritual, fitness and health, finance and business, family and community, and future and legacy. And I think they struggle with faith and spiritual the most because it's gotten to be, maybe taboo is not the right word, but you know, not as kosher to be able to talk about openly. And some of that is just, what is your value system? And I don't think people really take deep inventory what their value system is.
Mm.
And it's usually rooted in some type of faith system, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, whatever that is, or Buddhism. Yeah, you have to really think about, even within those religions, what principles and values can you hang your hat on? Because that's going to help you dictate everything else. Because if you don't understand your values, if family is important, then you may lean in heavily on the finance and business, particularly entrepreneurs, right? Which I deal with. How do you deal with customers? How do you deal with employees? What's your value system? Is all my employees this is like, is kindness in your value system? Is it in your faith system, right? If you do that part, the rest of it's easy.
Mhm.
If your value system is you can, do all things, you know, do all things through Christ who strengthens you, then hey, you can get through this fitness and workout, and you're required, right, to do things well for yourself and to impact the community and surroundings. So I think they struggle with the faith. They, and that's the unknown unknown. I think that
Mhm.
I help people discover. You know, a mentor shared with me, hey, we have known knowns. We often help people with known unknowns, right? But what they don't always realize that when we come into the picture, we help them discover unknown unknowns.
Mhm.
And that's probably the biggest challenge because it's an unknown unknown to most people. That's even an issue. It's usually they start with uh, fitness and health and move all the way down the chain, and they forget about the faith and spiritual. And it doesn't have to be in organized religions. What is your value system? What do you believe in to help you make the decision all the way through the process?
Well, and I think about something you said at the very beginning, and I can't remember the context we were speaking about, but you know, most successful people, most happy people, most productive people, they have a sense that there is something bigger than themselves. There's not a lot, I'm sure on the margins we could find examples, but there's not a lot of happy, successful, productive people that think the world revolves around them. And it really is. I think even in what I do in sales training and coaching managers and leaders and that sort of thing, sometimes that is the thing that makes the rest of it go or not go. Because if I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing, then my day-to-day life, my day-to-day job becomes like breaking rocks at the prison, hump day, TGIF, and it has no meaning or no purpose. And like as you deftly said, I mean, it doesn't have to be religion or spirituality. It certainly can be, and it certainly is for myself and other people, but it doesn't have to be that. But it's that question of why in the world am I doing what I am doing? And that seems like a really trite, almost cliche thing in today's world. But until you know that, it's really hard to show up as your best every day. So I appreciate you calling that out.
Yeah. They have to find what the Japanese call, what I put in the book, their ikigai, Ikigai, right? And finding what you love to do. And I don't care what, you know, faith system or value system there is in the world, the highest form is love, right? And whether it's love of family and friends, but love of what you do, right? The universe loves to create, and your job is to find out what do you love doing or creating, right? And if you figure that out, what you love to do, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what the world will pay you for,
Yeah,
then that's where the magical elixir. And then all those things that we talked about before, right? The habits and the goal setting becomes a lot easier
that's right.
because that love is based on a value system that you already have and that you believe in, not someone else, but what someone else believes in. But that's the magical elixir. Those four things, and I help try to, help people discover their ikigai. And sometimes it requires them to pivot their business.
Mhm.
And so that's what I would encourage people to do is think about their faith and their purpose and finding their ikigai.
What what lessons did you learn as you were writing the book? I mean, obviously you've got a message, you've got something you want to get out to the world, but I imagine through the process and through the um, deadlines and I want to get it this much by then, and it's work. I mean it's work. And as you were working through the work, did you learn anything about yourself during the writing of the book?
Yeah, I learned everything we just discussed, right? It's a habit, it's instilling habits are hard. You have to forgive the motorcycle just went right through my neighborhood or the office park here. Uh, it's a habit, just like anything else. And if you don't love getting this message out, by the way, I tried to write a book 10 years ago. And when I know that this is something I love to do, I'm really good at it. The world needs it. The money will come. I know the money will come. And I think sometimes folks do that first, right? What can make me money?
Right.
And so I discovered, hey, this is a passion project out of love and wanting to impact people and wanting to create, right? So I learned that was just a very important thing to do. And then it takes the big vision. So I'm going to do this book. I'm going to do it big. I'm going to have this lunch. I'm going to do a bookmark with this. I'm going to do it, all these things, because if the vision isn't big enough, I realized I'll just put it to the wayside like I did before. And I knew this message, this book could impact hundreds, thousands, if not a whole lot more if God willing. So uh, it helped me know what my purpose is or confirm my purpose. So that was exciting.
Yeah, and I was thinking too, probably one of your pillars, is future, and you think about legacy, and when you get to, you and I aren't as young as we used to be. We aren't as young as we think we are. And you do start thinking about, what tracks are you going to leave behind?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that, and I guess it's perspective, but through your life, your perspective really does start to change. And it's a shame that we have to get on in life to understand some of that. Like sometimes I wish I could have the perspective I've developed in my late 50s. It would have been nice to have that in my 20s, but I didn't have it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's why these days I really love working with younger entrepreneurs
Mm.
because they have that opportunity if someone really shows them the light, right?
Yeah.
And I remember you saying you played a lot of baseball, and that helped you get mentored in a different way, and maybe you still find things that you wish you'd done 20, 30 years ago, but I think that helps, and it's just really finding that purpose again early, right? And knowing your why and what what drives you, then you can actually be in the surroundings and mentors to actually be shown that perspective in early in life. And the earlier you can do that, if you're listening out there, reading out there, I think that's an important thing. But here's what I would encourage your listeners to think about. Even if you're 40s or 50s like us, uh, there's still a lot of life left.
Amen.
There's a lot of life left, and you can still elevate X because there's, you know, you during the research of this book, I looked at one of the big things, which is regret, and I'm pushing Elevate X and transform your life because I don't want you to have regret in your life.
Mhm.
And I looked at the research, and one of the big things that older people or people in assisted living, everything talk about is regret.
Mhm.
And they're interviewing people late 70s, 80s. We got like 30 years. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of time. So, I'm thankful. Obviously, we want to learn it, but I'm thankful that we're still, young bucks in as far as that we're able-bodied. Once this knee heals, and we're mentally sharp still, that we can still do a lot of those things. And your kids are older, my kids are older, so we actually have all the freedom we want to elevate X and even
Mhm.
do more because we have that perspective now.
Mhm. I was speaking with a friend of mine not long ago, and he does what I do in Detroit.
Okay.
And it was the beginning of the year, and I said, "Hey, what are you?" He's 83. He's been doing this for I don't know 40 plus years. Hey, how's it going? Oh, it's going great. Just going through my goal setting session. Yeah. What kind of goals you got this year, Jerry? Well, I hadn't got to this year yet, but I just finished up crystallizing my 10-year goals. And
Wow.
and it's like, you know what? That's who I want to be. I want to be 83 setting 10-year goals of that
That's awesome.
person I want to be. I mean,
Uh,
it's
Me
incredible.
too. Me
Yeah,
too.
right.
Yeah.
We'll start to wind down, but I want to ask you just a couple other sort of lightning round questions
Sure. Yeah.
that have
Sweet.
popped up. Um, what do you think? What is it you love about coaching, and why do you think, other than the accountability that you talked about? I mean that's a big part of it. But why do you think? Why do you think leaders? Why do you think everybody needs a coach?
I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's to give them different perspectives.
Yep.
Yeah. And to be able to challenge them to do more than they realize they can. Because most of the people that comes to me, and probably to you too, Robin, is they've reached a certain level of success.
Mhm.
And it's challenging them to, hey, win another Super Bowl, win another championship. And I think they start to get stagnant. And that's just why you see a lot of people sell their companies or uh, retire and they die soon afterwards, or they have a lot of health challenges or whatever that case may be, because it is in our core, right? It's in our universal nature to keep creating. And that's why I love doing that so much, because me impacting that one individual can help them decide to have another office in New York, Miami, Richmond, whatever it is, or start another business that's going to impact an entire community, or create a nonprofit now that can impact even more lives. And so that's why I love doing what I do. But it takes someone, and even myself, I still have coaches and mentors because, again, especially when you deal with problems, Einstein said it really well, you know, you can't solve a problem with the same level of mind that created it.
Mm.
And if you created this problem of how I'm going to get out of this issue, or how I'm going to scale, or how I'm going to grow from 3 to 10, 10 to 30, whatever that case may be, you just maybe can't see it, right? Your self-talk is got you to this level of success. That self-talk hasn't changed to get to this level of success. And I think that's what everybody needs coach. Hey, the greatest in the world had coaches, right? The Jordans, the Kobe's, the Tom Brady's, Tiger Woods, they all had coaches because they they get to see things from a different vantage point and be able to help them make those tiny little tweaks to help them go exponential. And I know, it sounds like you have mentors and coaches too. As a coach, I still need a mentor and a coach to really elevate for me. I need that extra perspective. I need the extra challenge. You know, the I'm still trying to get to that perspective of 8 figures and not just 7 figures, right? They say, if you're making say $100,000 a year, and if the standard is a million, you're paying a $900,000 tax on what you don't know or how you don't see things, right? And then when you get to 7, it's like you're paying a 10 or $9 million tax,
Yeah.
right, on not knowing how to get to 10. And I think, and it's just not the money, right? It's about doing your best and growing and impact the world that you live in.
Yeah, I think you said it well earlier as well, where, as human beings, we're always being sucked back to mediocrity.
Yeah.
And we can self-sabotage, we fall off the wagon, whatever language you want to use, but there's a real pull, to the resistance. And, as you said, I have always had a coach, and at different times I've had 2 coaches.
Yeah.
And so I think if the coach has a coach, it's probably a pretty good signal. And I think a lot of folks that are listening to this, it's really worth thinking about if you were going to master if you were going to learn to play golf and you wanted to learn to play golf as quickly as you could, and you didn't want to take trial and error 2 decades to do it, well, you would get a coach. You would go find a good teacher. You would meet periodically. You would get some feedback. You would try some things. You would get some, and I think sometimes folks in business, they don't take advantage of that enough. And so I'll have all of Nat's contact information in the show notes, and certainly if any of this resonates, you can reach out to him. Nat, the last question I have, a little bit of a curveball, but I'm curious. I know you're a learner and I know you're a reader. What are some of your favorite books, the books that have made the biggest impact on you?
Yeah. Some of them, it's an old one. It was, I want to say 1991, 92 or something like that. One of my first ones was Pat Riley's The Winner Within. That started me in this whole track of personal development success. The Greatest Salesman in the World, Think and Grow Rich, The Alchemist. They're probably some of my top ones there. And then the one I've been recommending over the last 8, 9 years, right down your alley, because his system is very similar to Sandler's system. Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an amazing thought process on how to do it. And I've gone through your program once before. So, oh wow, this is really similar.
Yeah, it's really
And
fun.
so it was pretty cool. So as far as negotiation goes, along the lines of Elevate X, by the way, here's the cover. I'd love for you to get that. But
Okay, I was wondering like what we're doing here.
yeah,
Come on,
yeah.
Nat.
This is one I think I actually use it now as a resource. Like, God, what was that story again? Or
Yeah,
when I try to coach people through things, it's like, what did I say again? So definitely this one. But if you want to just we talk about habits, one of the things that I relied on heavy was Atomic Habits. That's a great one too if you want to have some different thought process on just habits. If you're just trying to do habits, I would say those two have been ones I've really over and over pushed as far as entrepreneurs goes. And I just I don't know about you. I read 3 or 4 books at one time. I read relationship books because I'm in a relationship now. But you have to think through what you specialize in, right? 4 hour work week. I love a lot too. It's a big one out there. So those are
Yeah, I
just
just
good.
saw, I just read something from the Gallup organization. I think it was yesterday, and they said that their data shows that uh, people are reading on, excuse me, on average, 3 books less than they were, you know, 5 years ago or whatever the time frame was. And
Wow.
I think, as a leader, I say this a lot, but Nat, I know one of the things that sort of drew me to Nat years ago was he's a learner. He's curious. He got excited about some of the same things I got excited about. And leaders who don't read I always think they're at danger of becoming stale. Their message becomes stale. And there's something about reading where you learn these little connections or you learn these little anecdotes, and then you can sort of put them into, and I think it just makes you more compelling and more interesting.
Yeah.
And even if you don't learn the, dynamic structure that you're going to implement to change reading doesn't have to be a how-to. I think,
Yeah.
and I think that's what a lot of people think, but I think reading is just, it makes you a more compelling, fresh, interesting person for your team. So I appreciate you sharing those books.
Yeah.
Those are some classics.
Real quick tip on reading, right?
Yeah,
I audible a lot, and I'm listening at 1.5, 1.67
yeah,
speed, and that might help you. And again, I would encourage you to kind of think through if it's not interesting or it's not resonating, skip it, right? I prefer you not to
yeah,
skip my book when my Audible comes out either. But hey, do what works for you. And then also I use a tool called Headway. There's a bunch of, executive briefs or basically cliff notes, right? So
yeah,
if you're not, ready to always consume a full book, consume bite size. That's why I did it the way I did with my book Accelerators was just, hey, how do I make this bite size? Just take a little bit every day. They say, Slight Edge is another great book by Jeff Olson. If you read 11 pages a day, you'll finish a book like in a month or less, depending on the average book. And that's at least 12 books a year.
yeah. That's
Just
interesting.
11 pages. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good tip. So there's a new goal for folks, 11 pages a day.
Yeah.
Good. And Audible too.
Yeah.
Think you're right. So Nat, tell folks where to find you, if they want to connect with you when we're finished. Tell folks a little bit about your day job and the work that you do, and we'll close things out.
Yeah. I work with entrepreneurs, executives who might have plateaued or gotten stuck, really clarify their vision and align their people and execute on that. And that's what I do and help them give the perspectives, accelerators, and compound action they need to get to where they want. Uh, to reach out to me or get the book, Get Elevate X, go to getelevatex.com. All right. And if you want to connect with me, everything's /Nhat Pham on LinkedIn, Facebook, or X, they call it these days, right? And then Instagram is Nhat_Pham. Somebody got to that one before I did. So, or just Google me, and,
Yeah,
and I should show up pretty high up there. So if
and
that's
I'll put some of that in the show notes as well. So Nat, it's always great talking to you. Thanks for coming on,
it's a pleasure.
and
Thanks for having me.
heal up quickly, will you please?
Thank you. I sure will. I sure will.
All right, we'll see you.